Other than that, how has everything been going, you guys? How has things been going in your lives and your classes? Is everything going okay? Anaya, I know you're not feeling well, so we've been kind of in touch a lot. So I know that you've been working um, with your presentation. You've kind of been communicate in touch with me about the class. So I know you've been staying on top of everything. How have things been going in your other classes?
Everything else with my other classes are good except for biology. I don't understand how that will work out online,
Yeah.
but I'll see how that turns out.
Okay. How's everything been going with you, Gabrielle?
Pretty good. I actually just started a new job before all of this stuff happened,
Mhm.
at a bookstore. So I've just been reading books,
Okay,
everything like
awesome.
that. So, but yeah, same thing with my bio class. This professor has not gotten in touch with us at all. So, that's gonna be awkward. Just like,
Yeah.
like we just have not heard anything from her. So it's just up in the air at this point.
Yeah, I've kind of been telling my students that the instructors, because I know I had to learn Zoom. Like I've had to like take YouTube crash courses all week last week for a lot of this new, online technology. So kind of bear with them a little bit.
Yeah.
He or she should be in contact with you, especially this week. But try to, a little bit of patience with them because I know some of them are panicking. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
they've been panicking in my department in terms of not only using technology but having to learn to use it so fast. So,
Exactly.
but definitely check in with them. I see Okitho. Hey, Okitho. Look, I done got real country with your name. All right, you guys. We'll go ahead and try to get started. I know as people will kind of come in, I'll backtrack if I have to do any backtracking. But other than that, I've only kind of blocked out just an hour for us to meet today. And if you guys have had a chance to look at the updated course outline, which I'll pull that up in just a minute, you'll see that there are changes to the platform, how we'll be getting the information or how I'll dispense my instruction. But I want you guys to look at it now as a hybrid class. So we
Mm-hmm.
will be doing 50% online. So that'll be the face-to-face. You guys see how I kind of have it set up for once a week. And then that other day will be reserved for you guys to kind of really tackle the assignments, move at your own pace to get things done. And we'll kind of set up an end of the week deadline. I call it a soft deadline for you guys to get assignments in. So a little bit of changes to the rigors of the class, right? So we've made adjustments to the presentations. I'll point to that in a little bit. We're making adjustments to weekly questions. Normally we have the discussion forum where I kind of throw questions out at you guys. But with our new format, all weekly questions are going to be posted to Brightspace discussion board. And that way, we may reference it in our not face to face, but Zoom meeting format. And then from there, you guys will have the time to answer the questions on Brightspace, so that I can kind of get a look at what you guys are taking away from the reading, how you're engaging, etc. So again, start to look at the course as a hybrid course moving forward. We will make scheduled Zoom meetings. My goal is to do it for 1 hour once a week, but of course I'm here if you guys need me outside of that. I still have regular office hours, so I'll send all of that in a bright space. Even though you guys can't meet, I still have Zoom office hours. So my goal is to make myself available so that um, any questions you guys have, any one-on-one help that you may need, especially as we move closer to this final paper, you guys will have that access. So plan, especially before spring break, plan for us to meet every Tuesday. And I think that's the way I have it blocked with our Zoom meetings. only for an hour. I know you guys, even though we're all at home, I have never been this busy in my life. I'm going to be honest with you, okay? With getting everything with school, I have my teenagers plus my nephew here at home. So it's a lot just to kind of maintain or manage. So we'll figure it all out together. Have you guys had a chance to look at the updated course calendar? Let me
Yeah.
pull it up. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's good. I know for those of you who I have, hold on, I'm trying to share this with you. For those of you who I have with me today, I know you guys have been following through, but let me just highlight the updated calendar. And now is a good time. If you guys have any questions about anything that's listed here, we can talk about it. But just really quickly, as far as the information, what did you guys think? Is this easy to read? Is it easy to understand? Is there any confusion or questions that you guys may have about the updated calendar?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
For the Gwendolyn Brooks one, where would you like us to submit it? Because I've checked and there's like no assignments to turn it into.
Okay, yeah, I haven't listed the assignment onto Brightspace yet, but I will. So let me jot that down to add the assignment to Brightspace. That's my bad, Paola. How are you, Paola?
I'm doing good right now. Just staying at home.
Okay, yeah, I know. Look, and I kind of asked everybody how has everything been going with their classes. So has everything been okay with your classes? Are you doing okay?
Yeah, it's just a little confusing and trying to catch up with all the assignments that are like being thrown right now.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's going good.
Okay, all right, good. And you've been doing good too with reaching out to me, Paola. So anything that you may find confusing, you may perhaps, let's say, just need extra explanation or clarification. You guys continue doing what you're doing and emailing me, contacting me. I've been doing my best to get back to you guys as soon as possible. So I'll do my best to help. And to again follow up with the Gwendolyn Brooks connection paper. I'm uploading that assignment to Brightspace today. So I guess we can pick up from there. How is everything going with the Gwendolyn Brooks response paper? Originally it was due last Thursday, but I know it's been hair on fire ever since, you know, for about a week now. So if we slow down and think about it, how are you guys doing with that Gwendolyn Brooks response paper?
With which I helped with like how to start, it was going good, but I feel like I'm overthinking it because I don't want to do bad on my response. So that part was kind of hard to like build the paper after that because I wanted to make sure the points were like on topic and flowing with the paper. So yeah.
Okay, that's good. I like that, Anaya, because actually in reaching out to you, because I, you know, just to kind of pull everybody on board, I did get a question from Anaya over the weekend about the Gwendolyn Brooks connection paper, and it really has kind of helped me to inform you guys to really stay focused on the question. So, you know, the Gwendolyn Brooks response paper is really all about connection. So it's how you connect it to whatever poem you select. So I think I laid out about 4 or 5 Gwendolyn Brooks poems, right? And you guys in this response paper you're discussing how you connected with the poem. So try to keep in mind the purpose of the assignment when you guys are completing this assignment. It isn't so much a critical analysis like the watermark or ring of keys paper. It's a little different in that what's driving this paper is your discussion of how you connect it to it. So you guys see in the assignment sheet how I gave you questions that prompt you, or not questions, prompts. So it'll say, you know, I am reminded, you know, in this Gwendolyn Brooks poem, I am reminded of, and it kind of gives you room to fill in those blanks. however you connect with whatever poem you choose, whether it's Kitchenette Building, We Real Cool. I think I had a student talk to me about that one. I think I added Mother. Whatever poem resonates the most with you, it is that connection that you want to pinpoint in this paper. So an example, using Anaya and I's discussion. Anaya was working with the Kitchenette Building, and I believe she said she connected to the poem through its use of visual imagery, right? So just making that declaration, she's already outlining what her thesis is. She's going to discuss this poem, Kitchenette Building, according to the connection of visual imagery. So in her paper, she's going to really break down the connections to either language that Gwendolyn Brooks used, metaphor that she used, as it pertains to visual imagery. So you guys really want to treat this as a connection paper, yes, but also as an essay, and an essay that is being driven by your thesis. Whatever connection you identify, that is the driving force of your essay. So I want us to stay away from just a critique of the poem. This isn't you taking me through a line by line reading of the poem. We kind of did that in class together. Now I just want to know, how did you connect to it? What did it make you think of? How did it make you feel? What did it remind you of? I spoke to a student about the poem We Real Cool, and it's a really short poem, but it's chock full of imagery about poverty, about what happens when we make certain decisions. I believe the student's main connection to the poem was life is short. So there is no real right or wrong with how you connect. How you connect is personal. It's based on your opinion. As long as you support it with the text, you guys are doing just what I want you to do with this paper, okay? Is anybody feeling like you're struggling to get the 2 pages in? Do you feel like you're not having enough to say, or how are we feeling with the parameters of the assignment? What do you
I
got?
have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Because I wanted to write about We Real Cool as well, but
Okay.
I don't want to take the whole poem and write about all of it, but like just certain lines and connect to it.
Yes.
Can I do that? Like I don't.
That's
I know
perfectly fine. Actually, that's a good question, Gabby, because you don't have to talk about the whole poem. You're really only talking about how you connected to it. So if you only connect with certain lines, I know the student I talked to with the We Real Cool poem, they kind of picked out that opening stanza, and they broke down the whole opening stanza according to their connection or thesis of life is too short, right? Value life, life is too short. So it doesn't have to be a full critical analysis, but I do think what could be helpful is maybe in your introduction, if you summarize your understanding of the poem. So you can lay it all out there in your intro, but then kind of make sure you present your thesis as well into how you connect it to the poem. So that's a good question, Gabby. Don't worry about connecting to every line, every word of the poem. You don't have to burden yourself with that. Again, let your connection drive it. So if the connection is visual imagery, if the connection is, it reminded you of your high school best friend. I know I read one of those poems and it reminded me of a friend from school who, despite the fact that he was intelligent and capable, he felt the need to provide for his family was more important. So, the We Real Cool poem, I connect with that on so many different levels, just to kind of let you guys know, no matter how you relate to it, there is no right or wrong, okay? All right, so I kind of done went into the weeds with the connection paper, but I just want to make sure you guys are clear on that. So Another quick reminder with the connection paper, I am uploading that assignment onto Brightspace ASAP. So when you guys are ready to submit, it will be there. If you have any issues uploading onto Brightspace, email me sidebar, let me know, and we can kind of work out ways to either help you or ways around that, okay? Another thing to keep in mind, deadlines. I don't want to give you guys a free for all card, but I do want you guys to know deadlines are fluid. So where it says, make sure you just get it in by the end of the week, and I gave you guys Friday, I'm okay if I get it Saturday. I'm okay if I get it Sunday, okay? So the due dates are firm in that I want you to try to meet that, but fluid in that I know the whole life schedule is off at this time. So if you need more time, I'm open to that. So we'll talk about that as well. Okay. All right. So you guys see on the screen the updated course calendar, at least for these next 2 weeks, leading up to spring break. I wanted to talk to you guys briefly about, let me kind of move down a tad bit. The James Baldwin reading. Oh yeah, that's really important because that is going to set up the film that I would like us to attempt to view this weekend. So you guys see on the course calendar where I introduce, or I'm adding the film If Beale Street Could Talk, right? This particular film is based on a James Baldwin short story. It really coincides with our discussion of the civil rights and Black Power movement that we have coming up on Thursday. I'll talk about that in a second. And it also lines up really well with our unit on realism, naturalism, and modernism. So shout outs to Okito and Jayla with their presentations last time we were in class, in really setting up the modernist movement. I'm gonna attempt to post that. So I'll reach out to Okito and Jayla about you guys forwarding me your presentation just so I can share, so that students can kind of engage and interact in that information. But what you guys will see is close parallels between everything we've talked about so far with naturalism, with realism, this depiction of reality, even the harsh truths, and the psychological issues or impact of that reality. So you'll see all of that in our reading of James Baldwin's Everyday Protest novel. We'll talk about that, and in the film. But before I go further, in sharing the If Beale Street Could Talk film, do we all have access to watch that film? Like, is there anyone who's anticipating issues? Maybe, I don't know, maybe your computer isn't equipped with video player. Like, do we all have access to watch the film if I upload, you know, a video or link recording of the film? Do we all have access?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, if you guys have any trouble with that, we'll again sidebar, email me, let me know, and we can work out ways around that as well. Okay, so all of that is in tune with our reading of James Baldwin's Everyday Protest novel. You guys see here on our updated course calendar, every week I'm laying out a weekly reading question, so you guys know, I believe that counts as 15% of your grade in the class. So this little moments of kind of reaching out to the class, responding to these questions, those give you really good points on both participation and weekly reading questions. So stay on top of those when you guys get a chance. Have we all had an opportunity to read James Baldwin's Everybody's Protest novel? Have you guys looked at that yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you haven't, I'm not shaming you. We have time, okay? But rather than me doing what I normally do in class, right? Because we read together. I always read with you guys. Sometimes I dominate the discussion in my take, or, you know, my analysis of the text, and I want to do something different with this platform. rather than us talk about what the text was about or what we got from it, I am going to open up a weekly forum on Brightspace under discussion board for our weekly questions. So you guys will be required to respond on Brightspace under our discussion board with the actual question. That way I can really make sure everybody's engaged and that I'm hearing from everyone. And in addition to that, you guys will be required to respond to one of your peers. Either you agree, maybe you want to add something to it. So the discussion board on Brightspace will become a central piece in the class of our weekly discussions. I'm sorry, our weekly reading questions. Okay,
Right.
so let's kind of pause for a moment and just talk about that. Everybody's protest novel. Let me pause for just a second. There's another screen I want to show with you guys that'll give us a little bit of information. Let me stop this share. Hold on. That'll give us a little bit more information about Baldwin. So let me pull this up and then pull you guys on board with me. One second. Here we go. All right. So can you guys see this James Baldwin? I can make this a little bit bigger. Let's see. Uh-oh. Can you guys kind of see this information on James Baldwin on your screens?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I know that I believe Jayla spoke briefly about James Baldwin in their modernist presentation. This is just to kind of layer that. So we have some basic knowledge of James Baldwin, even in the even in our text, the anthology. If you guys read any information about James Baldwin, you will see he is a very interesting contributor of not only the naturalism, realism, and modernist movement. He also overlaps into the Black Power movement, the civil rights movement as well. So he is a very important figure. So I want to give you guys a little bit of information about James Baldwin, a little context so you guys can kind of understand him a little bit better. He always spoke about pain and suffering of Black Americans and the saving power of brotherhood. So he's about community, pulling the masses together, and he's also about speaking truth. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move into everybody's protest novel. He was born in Harlem in 1924, so he was there during the Harlem Renaissance. He grew up witnessing it all around him. So he's familiar with quite a bit of the Renaissance contributors, Langston Hughes, Richard Wright. We'll talk about him in just a moment. He was born into poverty. He's the oldest of 9 children. He grew up in a difficult household. He had a very strict, judgmental, and demanding stepfather. And we kind of see that influence or that impact almost in every James Baldwin writing. You kind of see the impact of homophobia. We'll talk about that in a second. Racism, and just kind of being mistreated. We see that as a constant strain in all of his writing. He developed a passion for writing and became friends with Richard Wright. They call him the father of the naturalist movement. And Richard Wright helped James Baldwin secure a grant that really kind of kick-started his writing career. So shout out to Richard Wright. He really did use his position, his voice to usher new writers in. But we'll talk about Richard Wright in just a moment. We know that James Baldwin moved to Europe like so many other writers during this time. Remember, Chester Himes moved to Paris. A lot of them, Josephine Baker, even though she wasn't a writer, she was still a contributor. A lot of the jazz musicians, all of them were moving to Paris to escape the racism in the United States, but to also pull Europeans onto our side, right? Make them sympathetic to our cause. So James Baldwin, he helped with that. His writing often tackled taboo themes. So he would always tackle topics and themes that other people would be scared to embrace. So he's a pioneer in the fact that whatever was often swept under the rug, themes like homosexuality, themes like interracial relationships, themes like mental health or mental illness. He really did um, incorporate those themes in his writing at a time when a lot of people were ignoring them. He did make his way back to America during the rise of the civil rights movement. He was very instrumental as a voice for equality and civil rights. So keep your eye open for James Baldwin. We will see him not just in this movement, but also in the next. Okay. And if at any point you guys want to jump in, you can use chat or you can just jump on in with any questions. That's okay. Unfortunately, I can't see your faces or your hands, so interrupt me if you need to, okay? Another thing about James Baldwin, he is known for the art of confession. So make note of this, the art of confession. So where we are talking about his idea of protest literature, right? And what he feels the protest novel should incorporate. It really all deals with his strong attachment to the importance of confession as a form of healing. Now, who does that remind you of? Have we heard this before? Confession as a form of healing. Remember Toni Morrison's functions of the Black novel? It should be to share and to heal. So James Baldwin was early in making those connections of the art of confession. All artists, if they are to survive, are forced to tell the whole story. He allowed his experiences, so this is that naturalist and modernist thread. He allowed his experiences in poverty, humiliation, religious alienation, and estrangement from his family to drive his imagination and his writing. He wrote a semi-autobiographical novel, Go Tell It on the Mountain, which went into further detail about his struggles with his relationship, not only with his father, but also with Richard Wright. So you guys remember, we talked about Richard Wright. He ushered in James Baldwin's writing career. Well, those two fell out. Look, we're adding a little bit of gossip to this context. They fell out big time with James Baldwin's art of confession, right? He pointed out some shortcomings in Richard Wright's native son and his use of language in terms of the goals or purpose of protest literature. So quick sidebar, Richard Wright was world famous with his novel Native Son, and it was so revered and trumpeted because they viewed it as protest literature. So in James Baldwin's discussion of protest literature, the characteristics of a protest novel, he called out Richard Wright, and he kind of pointed out that some of his techniques does not fall in line with the expectations of protest literature. So we'll talk about that in a moment. You guys see that. Baldwin admitted that his writing was an escape to another world and an attempt to find love. So remember what we know about the Black vernacular, right? Remember in all of our studies about the Black vernacular that whether we're talking about language, whether we're talking about music, whether we're talking about the literature, it always is seeking to triumph over chaos. So Baldwin, again, he fits perfectly in contemporary African-American literature in that he felt like writing was an escape, an ability to triumph over that chaos, right? An attempt to find love. And he would always work out his issues with feeling unloved. So whether it was race, whether it was feeling as an unloved stepchild, a lot of this stemmed from how he was treated as a child. His father was a preacher, so even though he loved his spirituality, he loved church, he loved his relationship, that was always questioned and attacked due to him being a homosexual, so homophobia. ties a lot into, not homophobia, the effects of homophobia and hate ties a lot into his writing. I'm sorry, who wanted to add? Oh, look, I'm too thirsty. Sorry about that. All right. He was also called the conscience of the nation. I want you guys to keep that in mind about James Baldwin. He was called the conscience of the nation. So he was tapped to relate feelings, to relate American sentiments during the civil rights movement and the pro-Black movement in America. He was called the conscience of the nation in that he so eloquently argued the merits of the civil rights movement. He so eloquently wrote about, whether literature or essays, the need for equality. So he contributed greatly to those movements as well. I believe this was all I had on him. Also, moving into poetry, poetry of this period combined themes of protest with folksy narrative devices. So even though we are talking about James Baldwin, I just wanted to throw this in because I am going to throw some poetry at us as well that show elements of this protest literature or protest characteristics. And you see here, Gwendolyn Brooks is being shouted out as being one of those early writers of protest poetry. So we'll talk more about that. All right. So with this little tidbit of background, I wanted to ask you guys, what did you take away, or what's our understanding of Everybody's Protest novel? I know when I was reading it, I was kind of jotting down characteristics. So very similar to how I read Toni Morrison's Rootedness, I read Everybody's Protest novel, because what James Baldwin is trying to do, he's trying to lay out a formula for how a protest novel should operate, right? So in discussing that, he had to talk about the world accepted protest novel of the time, and that was Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. So you guys see how he points to that particular text often in kind of laying out the characteristics of what a protest novel should do, right? So from your reading, if you guys could perhaps, let's say, throw out any points that you understood or took away from Baldwin's outlining of how the protest novel should operate, his overall expectations of the protest novel. What did you guys see?
What I understood was that in order for everyone to understand, or the audience, the novel should be presented with an honest view in reality,
Yes.
about reality.
Yes, number one. Very good point, Gabby. That's the bottom line requirement for James Baldwin. It has to tell the truth, right? And keep in mind that he's coming from the naturalist, modernist, realist movement. So he's like, there's no time for sugarcoating. There's no time for trying to appeal to people's feelings or sensibilities, right? What do you want to add, Anaya?
Nothing. I'm
Oh, I'm
just
sorry. Look, I saw your box light up, so I thought you were trying to add something. So, okay, but we do see that first. He outlined that the protest novel should tell the truth. Good. What else did you guys see? What else? So we know it should always tell the truth. And I'll kind of lay out some context with that. Look, just to be space filler for you guys to flip in your book and find me some other expectations of the protest novel. But again, just to lay out some context of why it should tell the truth. He felt that Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, he felt like while she was attempting to emerge as this voice of morality, right? That the discussion of slavery itself, she really didn't tell the truth about it. Now he did lay out, oh yeah, she told about all of the horrors of it. She got really graphic with the violence that takes place in slavery, but James Baldwin feels that what would have been more honest of Harriet Beecher Stowe, what would have been more useful, would have been if she perhaps could have gotten to the heart of the matter, right? Why does this particular majority feel the need to enslave or dehumanize, right? So she was saying that in protest literature, or he was saying, sorry, Baldwin was saying in protest literature that the main goal should be to shine a light on the situation. And by doing that, to tell the truth, to get down to the nitty gritty. And what you guys will see as we learn a little bit more about James Baldwin, as we view If Beale Street Could Talk, James Baldwin is, I called him, and when I speak to my colleagues, I called him the literary Malcolm X. He is, even though he's a lot more, he's a writer. So in literary terms, he uses the language, he uses imagery, he uses metaphor. Oh, but James Baldwin can read you to filth, okay? He knows how to eloquently tell the truth, deal with his audience, point out inconsistencies or fallacies in certain arguments. So James Baldwin has a gift for telling the truth. He pulls no punches. So I like that. Something else I'm going to throw on the table, and this kind of piggybacks or supports the characteristic that he feels protest literature should tell the truth. He also feels that it should not be sentimental. So just in reading, and I stated this earlier, he feels like we shouldn't be trying to paint a pretty picture. We should not be trying to, play up to the feelings of an intended audience. So what you saw with Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, we know she had abolitionist background, right? I would say perhaps Harriet Beecher Stowe was writing Uncle Tom's Cabin from an abolitionist point of view, where she was attempting to present abolitionists or that movement as a moral group, but she's also trying not to alienate or piss off, if you will, the white audience that she was writing to. So James Baldwin said it's all about the truth. The focus should be the truth. There should be no focus on sensibilities, sentimentality, or things like that. So I wanted to throw that in. He felt like your protest novel or protest literature should not be sentimental. Now, just to throw in something else, this alludes to the beef between him and Richard Wright. Richard Wright's Native Son was designed to be a protest novel, right? It was praised as protest literature. But James Baldwin came in like, it's too sentimental. We deal with a hero who is only viewing things through his perspective. And according to James Baldwin, the protest novel or protest literature should be written with other perspectives in mind. You are mindful of what other people may think or feel about this topic. So again, he was talking about Harriet Beecher Stowe, but simultaneous making jabs at his godfather in writing Richard Wright. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. What else? What are some other characteristics about the protest novel, or James Baldwin's expectations of the protest novel, that you guys want to add?
One thing I would say would be the presentation of what people would actually want from the results of the protesting?
Oh, absolutely, Okito. So being mindful of what the people want, absolutely. And that kind of goes back to what I just stated about being mindful of other perspectives. So he absolutely talks about an awareness of what the people may need with that particular piece of literature, being mindful of that. In holding up Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, he points out there was so much more that Harriet Beecher Stowe could have done with that narrative. Well, actually, he called it, well, it's revered as protest literature, but he's disputing that fact. He's like, Harriet Beecher Stowe was not an author. She was a pamphleteer. He states that um, Uncle Tom's Cabin reads like a pamphlet. It doesn't actually read like a novel. And in pointing that out, I think he is, to add to your point, Okito, I think he is laying out, she's not even aware of its overall impact. She is kind of dispensing this information for the purpose of, to me, I want to say, this is me kind of adding my own 2 cents, the purpose of promoting abolitionists, right? That was the overall main purpose. When he feels that the purpose of a protest novel or protest literature is to speak the truth, be aware of your audience perspective, what it is they need. And one more thing I'll throw in too before we shift from this topic. He says that it needs to attempt to present a complete picture. So even though Harriet Beecher Stowe may have got it right with the atrocities of slavery, he was a little bit uncomfortable by the fact that she spent so much time talking about those atrocities without exploring why slave masters may feel the need to do this, right? So it didn't present a clear picture. Again, it kind of focused on Black bodies over the perspective or the insight into purpose, right? Why is all of this happening? What is going on in white America or with the majority to where they feel the need to do this? So he kind of feels too that there needs to be more motivation to present a complete picture, right? All right, so I'll leave it there because I'm not going to go, I don't want to give you the reading for you. I'll outline this particular question, the same question on Brightspace under discussion board. And then that way I can really get a good view as to what do you guys think about, and let me pull this screen back up really quickly. What do you guys think about Baldwin's expectations, right? So the question is, what does Baldwin's essay reveal about his expectations of protest literature? So I'll post this today. You guys will get the announcement or get the notification that the discussion board is up. You guys will have until really next Tuesday. Again, deadlines are flexible to really respond, but try not to put this off too long. This is already a layover from last week because this was a homework from last week and before classes were canceled. So I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but I do want you guys to get to know James Baldwin. He is awesome. Get to know his insight, especially as we move into our discussions of civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, and the necessity of the protest novel, okay, or protest literature. All right, so I'm moving on from this. Did you guys have anything to add about the James Baldwin, Everybody's Protest novel reading?
No,
All right.
you basically touched a lot.
I'm sorry, Anaya, say it one more time.
I said, no, you basically touched enough.
Okay, awesome. All right, you guys. Toni Morrison, Song of Solomon. I think the last discussion we had on that was in relation to the hero's journey. So with that, and you guys will see with the hero's journey, what I was holding back from in class is you guys, I didn't want to give too much of the book away, but as you read more, it will become clear Pilot's role as mentor. See, we haven't really seen her fully engaged in her role as mentor to Milkman, but as you guys read more, oh, you see her take that position wholeheartedly. So where are we? I think I asked this in a email question. So I know from a few of us what page number you guys are on in the text, but where are we? You guys just kind of throw out some things. What's happening in the text where you are right now? Just throw some things at me. Let me kind of touch base and see where we are.
Where Milkman and Guitar are planning to steal from Pilot's gold.
Okay, yeah, all right. Anybody else? Where are you in the book? And real quick, Gabby, about what page is that?
Like 180 something.
Okay, so 180. Okay, good. So you're about on schedule. I want to say that's about where we should be on schedule, but I know schedules have been thrown off at this point. So, all right. So you said about page 180. I'll look around there. All right, good. So Milkman and Guitar scheme to steal from Pilot. All right, good. What else? I heard someone else speak up.
I'm slightly past that.
Okay.
Where they actually, or Toni actually starts talking about Corinthians.
Okay, yeah.
Or like just like after that, like I don't want to give too much away.
Okay. Oh, I know, girl. Look,
so
I try so hard. It's so hard. But with that, around what page do you think that is, Gabrielle?
Like it stops like around 200,
Right.
or actually like 203.
Okay.
Yeah, 203.
All right, good. So we're not too far off. Good. Pay close attention to Corinthians. And if you can, you guys, if you can, be mindful of the biblical names illusion sheet I gave out. I may have to repost that onto Brightspace, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. But pay attention to Corinthians, her role, and we'll talk about how that lines up with the biblical name as well. With Milkman and Guitar, pay attention to Guitar. I mean, of course, we're always paying attention to Milkman. This is his story. But so far, we've identified Guitar as helper. But pay attention to Guitar's story because it's unique. We'll talk about that too. What else? Did anybody else want to throw out where they are with the reading? Look, I'm going to mute real quick. Look, my son is starting to play music. Hold on real quick. I can't. Hold on. Sorry, you guys. We have to share space, and let me tell you, it's no fun. All right. So everyone else who isn't sharing, I won't put you on the spot. However, get on top of that reading, because my goal moving forward, especially the assignments or weekly reading questions that I will be assigning, I am going to be assuming we are all reading and we are all at least on page 185. Now, if I'm wrong, stop me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put us about at 185 for this week. So we'll build from there. Now, since time will be getting away from us, read I won't say forget the schedule, read as much as you can, but read as much as you can, because what I want to show you guys really quickly with our last 10 minutes is, can I navigate this page? Is this next page down here, which is the final paper topics for the final essay, which is due week 15, week 16 of the semester. So have you guys had a chance to take a look at the assignment sheet for the final essay?
No, not yet.
I heard some
No.
people say no. If you haven't, kind of take a look really quickly at what I have up on the screen, because as we're reading, and I know I've thrown a lot at you guys as far as our reading, things like figurative and literal meaning, metaphors. We talked about similes. We've talked about irony and allusions and motifs. Kind of package that information. We've also talked about the story itself of Milkman, his journey or flight to self-actualization, right? So we've talked about how identity has been an issue with our characters. We've talked about the historical context of what's going on in the world around them. I think this was around the 90s. It's kind of taken us through 1930s into the 60s, right, you guys? So while we're looking at naturalism, realism, modernism, even protest literature, keep all of that information in mind as you're reading so we can make those necessary connections. But take a look, if you will, really quickly on the assignment sheet that I have up. I have a due date as far as a first draft or an outline, just to kind of help keep us on task. So Friday, April 27th is when I'll kind of really call for receipts. I'll tell you guys, show me what you've been working on with your research paper. Let me know what topic you're exploring, what research you may be tying into it, because I do want us, even though we've been doing practice, critical analysis paper, we've been doing practice. Right now we're doing a practice connection paper. Those skills is what's helping us write this final paper. So right now you guys are just depending on your analysis, your critique, but we're going to pull into this secondary sources. We're going to pull in research. We're going to look at other people who have studied this text, what they have said, right? So open yourselves up to what we've learned so far, where we are in the text right now, and how you can make connections to these possible questions. So let's take a look really quickly. I gave you guys a list of 10 options, but I do want you guys to know this isn't a comprehensive list. If you have a topic or a direction that you want to take your paper that's not listed here, we can talk about that, and perhaps maybe even I can add it to the list. But just to give you guys some ideas, I've laid out about 10 points here that you guys can choose to build your final essay. So let's look at the first one. We've talked about the importance or the significance of the names in this novel. Names like Pilate, Ruth, I think her name is Corinthians, Magdalena, but they call her Lena, right? All of these biblical allusions. Your final paper could go into deep research mode on that topic, and you could discuss the importance of names in Song of Solomon, whether you are focusing on the use of the biblical names or whether you are discussing the significance or importance of names in reference to family history, okay? So put a pin there. If while you've been reading, you've been interested in the names, right? How are these names helping us to identify the person, right? You guys have that option. Another thing to consider, discuss the symbolic meaning of character names. We just talked about that. So you have several options if you are leaning towards the significance or importance of names. You can choose to talk about them in terms of biblical meaning. You can also choose to talk about them in terms of family history as it relates to the text. So another possibility, you guys can analyze the flying African motif at play in the text. So analyze the possibility of flight in terms of pros and cons. you can look at it that way, or you can just look at all of the ways that Toni Morrison incorporated the flying African motif in the novel. And there's lots of instances. So I had a couple of students who emailed me about the length of this assignment, 6 to 8 pages. This is a 300-page book, right? If you are talking about things like the flying African motif, over 333 pages, there's a lot of instances you can point to and discuss that could easily fill up a minimum of 6 pages. So don't worry at all about the paper requirements. I promise you, in discussing a book this rich and this long, you will come out with more. I'm really thinking us reaching that 8 cap very easily. So keep that in mind. I don't know if you guys have paid attention, but in the novel, anytime they talk about anything white, right? It is done very intentionally. So whether they're talking about the white rage or white, the snow that was falling, the white snow falling at a particular time, look or pay attention to Toni Morrison's use of the color white in the text. So one of the prompts for the final essay is, what does the color white signify in Song of Solomon? And it says, use examples from the book to support your answers. So hopefully when you guys have been reading, you've been reading, annotating, note-taking, because early in the semester when I passed out the handout on how to read African American literature, one way is pay attention to your characters. Pay attention to repetition. Anything you see that has been alluded to time and time again, that is intentional. That's they are attempting to make a symbolic connection with that. So pay attention to the color white. Also, another direction you guys can take your paper: how does poverty affect Goodtar's outlook on life? So I've been kind of signaling for you guys, pay attention to Goodtar. Even though he is a helper, I mean, Goodtar, honestly, to me, he is, in some cases, Milkman's voice of reason, but also he helps to put the world in proper perspective for Milkman. So look at how he sets up the world. In a lot of the discussions that he has with Milkman, he talks about human nature. He'll talk about the human condition. He'll talk about those types of things. But what gives him that perspective is his poverty, kind of what he has had to deal with in life. So one possible paper topic is poverty and Goodtar's outlook on life, right? Could poverty have influenced his views on racial discrimination? So that ties into realism, naturalism, modernism, and that's a way too you can connect to the text. Another way, or another possible topic, and I like this one a lot. Do you guys feel that the women in Song of Solomon face a double standard, right? We talk about how most of well, we haven't talked about it, I don't think, but most of the storytelling in the text is through men perspective. We hear Milkman's perspective, we see Goodtar's perspective, we also see Making Dead's perspective. We get Pilot's perspective, but only in relation to when she's talking to Milkman. So kind of look at how woman voice is dealt with in the text, and do you feel that there's a double standard here? We'll talk about a little bit more about that. For those of you who are under the Black Arts Movement, or for those of you who aren't, right? We're going to talk more about the Black Arts Movement next week, right? That's the presentation for next week. Look at what we learn about the Black Arts Movement and identify what key points you see in the novel, okay? And lastly, we're at the end of our meeting. You guys can also look at how Making Dead believes money is freedom, Toni Morrison's use of magical realism, and interpretation of the ending. So if you haven't looked at this handout yet, if you don't know what direction to take your final paper, this is the handout to help you at least start mapping out a direction for that final paper. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I do want to hear from all of you as to possible topic selection. So I'll put that off in about a week or two, but definitely start considering writing on one of these topics, okay? All right, so we've come to the end of the meeting. Did you guys have any questions for me before we get out of here? Any questions, my people?
I have a question. My question was about the response paper that we did. Was it supposed to be specifically on one poem, or would it be okay if we touched on multiple poems, like things we connected with?
That's a good question, Okito. We did talk about the poem earlier in the meeting, but keep this in mind with the poem. That's a good question. Select one, because I want us to practice writing to a focus, right? So select one poem that you feel you connected with the most. So I know in reading all those poems, we may connect to all of them, but which one do you feel you connected to the most and why? So with that connection paper, you are focusing on how you connected with it. So I'm gonna give you just a quick example. And Anaya, I'm gonna keep using you, girl. You've helped me out with, you know, kind of addressing questions on this. But so let's say, for instance, that you read Kitchenette Building and you connected with Kitchenette Building because you connected with the, let's say, visual imagery. Or let's say you connected with Kitchenette Building because you yourself grew up in, or at least knew someone who grew up in similar conditions, right? You are only going to talk about that connection. So it's not so much a critique of the poem as it is a discussion of how you connected to that poem, okay? So pick one poem that you connected with the most and then identify how you connected with it. So maybe you connected with it in that it reminded you of someone or something. Maybe you connected with it because it spoke to you, you found a certain part of it meaningful. Just be clear in identifying how you connected with it and then using the text, pointing to the text to help support that, okay? Does that make sense? Did I help it out?
Yeah. I had a quick question about that with the connection. Like, what direction should we go in if we're connecting it with like a movie or a TV show or something like that?
Okay, that's a good question. The direction you should go with it would be, in what ways are they, I mean, how did you connect with it? So again, that question must be answered. So let's say you want to connect it to, let's say, an episode of Westworld. I'm just throwing something out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Gwendolyn Brooks' poem, Kitchenette Building, resonated with me the most due to its connection to my favorite film, Westworld. Okay, so first I set that up. Then I go into how I connected. I found the poem connected to the film Westworld because, and then you lay out how, right? The ways that it's related or that you saw the connection. So once you lay that out, then your body paragraphs will do the work of supporting that by laying out explanation, logic, and reasoning that ties to how you connected the two. So you guys will find out in writing this paper, you can't avoid answering that question, right? What poem did you connect to the most and why? So the paper will be driven by your response to that question. The poem I connected to the most was We Real Cool Because. And then whatever you outline as being your reason, that's where your body paragraphs need to support and develop that. So you can bring in quotes from the poem, you can bring in lines from the poem that you connect to instances from that film or that movie. But it all still revolves around your connection.
So do we need a works cited for this paper or?
Oh, that's only if you are drawing or pointing to another text. If you are doing film, don't worry about a connection or a works cited page there. Only if you are citing someone else. So if you're citing, let's say the work, let's say I want to compare Gwendolyn Brooks' poem with a poem we read from, or let's say Lorraine Hansberry, The Raisin in the Sun, right? Let's say I want to compare a poem with what we talked about with Lorraine Hansberry, Raisin of the Sun. If I'm going to quote Raisin of the Sun, if I'm going to pull in any use of that play, I need to cite where my use of it. So anything that you use or borrow that you bring to your paper, you need to cite it. Okay. All right, good questions, you guys. Anything else?
If we already submitted the assignment, is it too late to change it?
So you submitted the assignment already, Okito. Where did you submit it? Did you submit it on Brightspace? Can you hear me, Okito?
Yeah, I can hear you. I submitted it on Brightspace.
You did? Okay. If you submitted it already and want to change it, yes, you can either email it to my email address, or you can try to upload it again on Brightspace. But yeah, if you feel now kind of getting this clarification, you need to make some changes, definitely resubmit. Either email it to me or try it back on Brightspace.
Okay.
All right, good questions. What else? All right, so I'm not going to hold you guys up. I know you may have other classes you have to get to, but just know this. Every Tuesday, right, until spring break, we'll meet in this forum, 11:30 to 12:30. Know that I'm using our Brightspace course page for all communication. So make sure you guys are checking that regularly. For all of you on here, I've been checking your engagement. You guys have been checking. I got some students who haven't checked in 19 days, 14 days. So really make sure you guys stay on top of checking Brightspace. And if there are any changes, I am letting you guys know ASAP. Did you guys make note of the phone number I sent to you guys in your midterm progress reports?
Yes.
Okay, good. That is, which I don't have my phone next to me. Oh, yes, I do. That goes right to my cell phone. So that's Google Voice. If you guys want to text me a quick question, maybe you don't want to get caught up in a phone call with me. You know I'm going to talk you to death, right? Maybe you just want to text me something really quickly. Use that number, 708-872-7788. And I'll post it again on Brightspace. But we know we have to really stay engaged with each other. Oh, really quickly. So Anaya, anybody else? I know I talked to you, Anaya, about the presentations. Do I have anybody else on here who is doing presentations?
Yeah, me.
Okay, Gabby, good. Are you guys clear on the update or changes to that format? Which Anaya, I know you good, but I haven't talked to you.
I've been in contact with Gabby about the stuff for the presentation. So we were basically just going over like the changes you made as far as the presentation, what we needed to add and all of that stuff. So
Okay.
I know she did have some questions. So
okay, you have some questions, Gabby?
Yes. As far as historical breakdown, you don't want like too much of it, right? You just want.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Because for us, it's a lot. It's both the civil rights and Black Power movement. So
yeah, not too much because I don't want to overwhelm you. Try to, even if you get a lot, if you can summarize it. So try to make it manageable. The guidelines I gave you guys was at least 2 paragraphs, but if you feel like it's a lot and maybe it comes out to be like a page, I'm okay with that. But something that's easy for me to share, you know what I mean? So,
Is it possible that we can send you what we have so you could
oh
tell us
yeah,
if we need to remove or fix anything?
that's a great idea. Yeah, so I'm open to that. You guys can forward me what you have, and I can kind of give any feedback if necessary. But I do know it's a lot to cover in civil rights and the Black Power movement. Have you guys heard from Gus? Have you got any?
No, but he added his part
Oh, he
like way
did.
before this, so
Okay, awesome.
yeah.
I'll reach out to him too, just to kind of make
Yeah,
sure.
I know he was kind of upset about the classes going online,
I
but
know. I know. I know. I have gotten a lot of email. Look, you guys see Ethel isn't here, but Ethel I've been on meetings with her trying to get her ready for Zoom, and I don't see her today. So um, there are some issues going on. So I'll reach out to him with that. But yeah, Anaya, Gabby, good idea. You guys can forward me what you have so far if you just want maybe to kind of get my input on that. But I'm sure you guys are doing well. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, I can kind of take a look. I can help you edit some things to make it more manageable.
okay.
All right, you guys are awesome. I really appreciate you checking in, staying engaged. If you came in a little bit late, just to reiterate, we're moving to a hybrid course platform. So hybrid means 50% will be done at home, independent study. Other 50% will meet once a week in order to kind of talk out those things. So assignment due dates, they are fluid and flexible. If you need extra time, reach out, let me know. That's it. But with this Gwendolyn connection paper, this weekend, Friday, wink, wink, Saturday and Sunday, whatever you need to get it in, just make sure you guys get it in because I want to put that behind us, okay?
Okay.
So reach out to me. Let me know if you guys have any questions, any concerns. Other than that, I will see you all here in this space next Tuesday. Okay,
Okay,
you
have a
guys?
good day.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Anaya.
I said have a good day.
Okay, you too. All right, you guys, have a good day.
You
Bye.
too.
Thank you.
Day.
All right, see you guys.
And teaching
Leticia, I'm going to get you onto our Brightspace page.